Hi guys, I want you to bear with me because I'm going to make a video that's a little bit longer than the traditional videos that I make. A lot of you probably haven't voted yet, and if you haven't, I want you to think about this. What is the role of the president? Now, the president does many things. The president can veto just any potential legislation that's brought to him by Congress. The president also deals with foreign policy issues. And one of the things that the president can do is a president has the power to appoint federal court justices. So here's just a quick civics history, and I think this is important for most people to understand. There are three branches to the government. There's the executive branch, which is led by the president. There's the legislative branch, which is Congress, and then there's the judicial branch, which is the courts. Now, there are two systems, court systems. There's the state and the federal, and then there's two legislative systems. You have the state legislature and you have the federal legislature. Now, one of the things that has been critical in terms of how the Constitution is interpreted is who is sitting in the Supreme Court of the United States. So, for example, over 30 years ago, we had the Roe v. Wade decision, which interpreted the Constitution to mean that the right to privacy included a woman's right to make a decision about what to do with her body, including having an abortion, if she was in a situation where she didn't want the pregnancy to go to full term. Now, we know that decision was extremely controversial. And many states wanted to overturn the decision because of their own constituency that may be more conservative, or the people who were in office were more conservative and felt that this was a bad decision. However, there is this concept of stare decisis. The Supreme Court is the ultimate arbiter of what the Constitution means. And because the Constitution doesn't list every single privacy right, we've had to make we've had to allow the Supreme Court to make decisions through case law interpreting what those rights mean. And to go farther back into the analysis of the Constitution, the writers of the Constitution were men who were slave owners. The Constitution was written 237 years ago. And at that time, most of those men owned slaves, and black people were considered inferior and not human. They didn't have the right to vote. They didn't have the right to have any kind of freedoms or liberties. And yet there are people nowadays in the Supreme Court and outside of the Supreme Court who are what's called textualists, who say, well, when the writers of the Constitution wrote it, they were not thinking about abortion as a right, or gay marriage as a right. But we see that they were also not thinking that black folks had rights either, right? They didn't think women had the right to vote or the right to speak up. Are we trying to go back 200 years ago? Are we going to scale back the interpretation of the Constitution to what these people that we don't know, we can't get in their heads, but we know that they were not people who respected the rights of women and anyone that wasn't a white man? So, bringing this back to the power of the president, we have two Supreme Court justices that are close to retirement age. And when we think about the power of the president at this point, we have a conservative supermajority in the Supreme Court that overturned Roe v. Wade, and that may end up overturning other decisions, in spite of the fact that we have this concept of stare decisis that we learned in law school, is basically let the decision stand. We thought that we could respect the decisions of the Supreme Court, but we've seen how the rights that were given through these case laws, through the interpretation of these cases, has been pulled back. So whoever is in office has the ability now to appoint federal justices, not just to the Supreme Court, but to the entire federal bench. And those are the people that are going to make our case law, guys. This is extremely, extremely important, and you have to try to understand this. Americans don't try to understand how the legal system works. When a president appoints these federal court justices, these are lifetime appointments. And we live in a country that has statutes, yes, we have statutes, But we also work with case law, and the decisions that we make that are made through the court systems are the foundation of everything that we do in our practice as lawyers. When we stop respecting individual rights because we're taking the approach that the founders of the Constitution would not have wanted this, we are taking our country backwards. And ultimately, those decisions that are made are not going to be made in a vacuum. They're going to impact all of us. Maybe it's not going to impact you directly, but it's going to impact your children if you have daughters, your friends. You have to think just beyond just yourself. And the decisions that are made about these things, about these appointments, are going to last more than 4 years. If you think about a Supreme Court justice that's appointed who's 50 years old, when are they going to retire? I mean, there's at least 25 to 30 years of decision making that person's going to be empowered with. And so that is the ultimate power of a sitting president. Make sure that the person that you vote for is going to be an advocate for you and for the people that you care about.